The world's gone mad. A terrorist attack by a suicide bomber, no less, on the Kerch Bridge, linking two parts of Russia, Crimea and the Russian mainland, is hailed everywhere by the Western political class and the Western media. Donald Trump is the only man in the world talking any sense. How crazy is that? Well, him and Elon Musk, the once and future owner of Twitter and my new best friend, and a British billionaire called John Caldwell, who lives in a 60-room castle with his 10th wife, who may be Russian, may be Ukrainian, who knows, who cares, has announced that he is going to hit Putin where it hurts by switching off the heating in his own 60-bedroom mansion. I tell you, the world has gone crazy. Henry Kissinger is Mr. Peacenik. Well, listen in for the nuggets. On Wednesday, it's the relaunch of the midweek mother of all talk shows at 9 p.m. UK time. I'm going to keep saying that. 9 p.m. UK time on Wednesday. We are going into orbit and we intend to stay there longer than Sputnik, longer than Starlink, which seems to have broken down over the Ukrainian front line. And we can only do that if you spread the word, build the audience, and keep the sponsors on board. So fasten your seatbelts for the Open University of the Airwaves, the College of Knowledge, where there are no tuition fees and where you are encouraged to speak back to the teacher. Stay tuned for the next 2 hours. It's the mother of all talk shows.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway. The mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway. The world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
It is though, isn't it? The world's turned upside down. All the liberals, progressives and leftists, as they describe themselves, are baying for more money, for more war. None of them are putting their own tin hats on and getting ready to go and fight in the front line with the poor bloody infantry of the Ukrainian armed forces. That they leave to deracinated mercenaries and the poor people of Ukraine. But the liberal and progressive media cannot cry more ravenously for more money, for more war in Ukraine. They are daily demanding new fronts and the stepping up of old ones. Donald Trump is the only man speaking sense. Just today, he said that somebody has to negotiate a peaceful ending to the conflict with Ukraine before we're all dragged into World War III, a nuclear war. I'm still quoting him. A nuclear war which would end life on this planet. They are all underestimating the power of nuclear. All of those were Donald Trump's words. But the opposite is coming out of the White House. Actually, Trump is being backed up by Elon Musk, who is now, after all, about to be the owner of Twitter, about which more later. He put out a poll which seemed to indicate that the great majority, despite the hyperactivity of the massive robot army of NATO and NAFO and all the other creeps and freaks that are in orbit around the NATO bureaucracy in Brussels, the defense ministries of the European governments. Never underestimate that. When you see a shoal of public opinion appearing to swim in one direction, keep reminding yourself that you are paying millions, tens of millions of public money in order to keep this robot army, which is determined to have you all think that opinion is swimming in the one direction. But Elon Musk's poll showed the opposite. It showed a big desire, a hunger actually, for an end to this conflict by negotiation, a conflict that need never have started and is about tomorrow to get very, very much worse. They can't get enough, the Liberals. They're staging provocation after provocation, all designed to entice Russia to up the ante so that they can persuade their own public that they need to up that ante too. We've had, of course, just in the last 24 hours, a terrorist attack, possibly by a suicide bomber, imagine, being cheered to the rafters in Western capitals, which, if it were happening at the hands of some Islamist, lunatic, fanatic, blood cultist, mass murderer, would be called just that. But because it happened on the Kerch Bridge and on Putin's birthday, it has been widely celebrated. And of course, the Russian State Council is meeting in the morning, and appropriate answers will be given by Moscow, and who knows, maybe also by Minsk, where there are massive troop movements going on right now in the Belarus, speeding towards the Ukrainian border, and it's only a 2-hour drive from that border to the Ukrainian capital, Kiev itself. The provocation, therefore, has worked in the way that the previous provocation last week has not worked. The biggest terrorist attack since 9/11, the American terror attack on the Nord Stream pipelines, which was an attack not on Russia but on Europe and in particular by Germany, actually failed. The gang that couldn't shoot straight only blew up one of the pipelines beyond repair, but the other pipeline is extant, and all that is required is for the German government to open the tap, as tens of thousands of demonstrators in Germany over the last weekend and this one are demanding. Mass demonstrations also in France against the Emperor Louis XVI, or 17th in this case, Emmanuel Macron. Mass demonstrations everywhere. The Austrian president biting his nails in the presidency right now, waiting on the result of the presidential election there, with the real possibility, maybe probability, that yet another European government is about to fall, directly related to the giant stone that we've struggled to lift and dropped only on our own feet in the economic war we declared against Russia. The provocations are coming thick and fast. The tossing of so-called collaborators into ditches, their hands tied behind their back, signs of torture evident even in the merest glance at the social media posting before one necessarily looks away. People with their throats cut and bullets riddled into their backs and the backs of their head are being boasted about on Twitter. It's funny, you get a false label applied to you if they don't like your political stripe. If you're me, you get kicked off of Twitter. If you're Scott Ritter and you're talking too much well-informed sense, but you can post videos of mutilated corpses being tossed into pits, just like the Eastern Holocaust and the Einsatzgruppen under the leadership of Bandera and his SS collaborators in the Second World War. You can see the death pits right now on Twitter. I just have looked at those death pits, posted by the leader of the Azov battalion. I have just seen a picture of the head of the Ukrainian armed forces. Not some infandus street corner Azov agitator. No, the head of the Ukrainian armed forces. He wears a watch, exceedingly vulgar in every respect, except one panel of the bracelet, very clear. You just have to zoom in, is a Nazi swastika on the watch of the head of the Ukrainian armed forces. You couldn't make this up. Nothing to see here, say the liberals and the progressives. Nothing to see here, says The Guardian and the New York Times and the BBC and CNN. Move quickly on. Nothing to see here. They've chosen their side, and they are mounting provocation after provocation. They are endorsing or ignoring every atrocity carried out by their Nazi and fascist and extreme Ukrainian nationalist collaborators, all to force a war with Russia. The question for you is this: do you want a war with Russia? As Donald Trump said, it might end all human life on the planet. Do you want your children and your grandchildren wiped out in a war to decide whether Islam, which has crossed borders 10 times in 500 years, been in Russia, been in Ukraine, been in Poland, which country it's to be in? Kupiansk. You ready to die for Kupiansk? Because you will, if the nuclear rockets start firing. Are you ready to die for Balaklia? Try saying that in a hurry. That's what this war is about. Whether these places are in Russia, and the people are Russian, they speak Russian, they identify as Russian, they want to be Russian. Aren't all you liberals all in favor of self-identification? Regard these people as Russians trapped in a Ukrainian body. Regard them as people in transition. Have some compassion. Let them identify. Isn't that what you normally say? Isn't that what you blackguard everybody else for not wanting to say? These people are Russians. They're trapped in a Ukrainian body. And they are determined to be what they want to be, to dress as they want to dress, talk as they want to talk, be themselves. Why don't you understand that? Why instead are you ready to kill all of us to stop Kupiansk being in Russia? I keep saying it because I know you've never heard of Kupiansk. I know you couldn't place it on the map. You can't spell it. You can't even say it. Even I have to write it down. You're going to die for Kupiansk if something is not done to stop this headlong dash to catastrophe, because it's happening tomorrow morning. Because Russia will reply to Ukraine's birthday present on the Kerch Bridge. And they will reply swiftly and devastatingly. If you're in a British or American linked installation in Kiev right now, I'd get out of there as fast as you can. If you are in any proximity at all to anything connected with NATO and with the foreign governments whose soldiers, yes, soldiers, trainers, special forces, diplomats, propagandists, financiers and armorers are teeming in Kiev, I'd get out of the way very quickly if I was you, because I feel sure that tomorrow will not be a good day for Ukraine. It will not be a good day for anyone living anywhere near the installations and the infrastructure of the NATO invaders of the Ukraine. Professor John Mearsheimer, no Bolshevik, him, no Russian, him, no communist, no leftist. Professor John Mearsheimer advised you in a speech you can watch right after this show on YouTube that Ukraine is going to be led into a minefield by NATO policy. It's going to be in a desperate pickle, he said with masterful understatement. He said, Professor Mearsheimer, not me, that Ukraine is going to be destroyed by these NATO provocations, which began at least in 2014 with the overthrow of the elected government in Kiev and its replacement by a motley collection of Nazis, fascists, and extreme Ukrainian nationalists whose first act was to delegitimize and illegalize the Russian language in the eastern part of their country, where 40% of their population lives, were to be made foreigners in their own land. And they have never accepted it, will never accept it. And so all of you seeking to recover, as you put it, the Crimean Peninsula, which has been Russian for longer than the United States has even existed. For 500 years, the Russian Navy has been docked there. Those of you seeking to recover Donetsk or Mariupol, this is moonshine. Do you think a nuclear-armed superpower like Russia is going to allow that to happen? And if there was even the remotest danger of it happening, the nuclear weapons would fly and Trump would be right and we would be dead. For Kupiansk, for Balaklia, and for Izium. Is it worth it? I know it's not your son that's going to be sent to fight there. It's somebody else's son. But it's your son that's going to die when the rockets start firing. Start firing, they will tomorrow. So when Russia wreaks its terrible revenge for the attack that they warned over and over again was a red line for them, in the morning, tomorrow, the question is what your leaders are going to do next. So far, despite one after another losing their majority, losing their seat, losing their office, they keep on keeping on. The question is, how long are you going to put up with it? Especially when, on every other front, your governments are such miserable failures. We've got an imposter in 10 Downing Street in Britain. If she wandered into a local town hall in Cleethorpes and claimed to be a local councillor, nobody would believe her. They'd think she was a madwoman that walked in off the street with delusions of grandeur, that she's the lady mayor of Cleethorpes. That's the level of delusion I'm talking about. Of course, she's in office, but not in power. It was the Chancellor, him, that big bad boy that done it and ran away, who decided on a budget so berserk that even the Conservative Party could not stomach it for more than 48 hours and forced them to scrap it in the middle of their own party conference in Birmingham. Oh no, she's saying today, I'm not going to cut people's benefits, as I said for the last 6 weeks I was going to do. That was him over there's idea, not mine. But she is in office. And a good war, a wag the dog, is always attractive for a leader in trouble, is it not? Liz Truss is particularly dangerous right now because she may be gone by Christmas. Joe Biden, bonkers Joe Biden, is particularly dangerous right now because he's facing the mother of all thrashings in the midterm elections in just a few weeks' time in November. A wagging of the dog would do Joe some good, perhaps. Worth a try, is it not? Little soldier Schultz, the head of a minority government in Berlin, might not survive the new year either, so why not turn up the amp, turn up the volume, turn up the weapons, flying like some monstrous dark cloud that will rain down acid and nuclear winter on all of us. Don't forget to vote on the poll which American can broker peace in the Russia-Ukraine war. There then follows Hobson's choice, Donald Trump or Elon Musk. So far, over 3/4 of the well over 10,000 votes that have been cast throughout the day favour Donald Trump. As I said, it's a world gone mad when Donald Trump is the only one speaking sense about the war in Ukraine. Who'd have thunk it? Well, let's hear what the sage from the USA, the one and only Garland Nixon, thinks about that. Welcome, Garland. Always a delight, not a pleasure, a delight to have you on the show. Let's start with that point. Neither of us are supporters of Donald Trump. I don't think that's a secret to anyone on either side of the pond. How did it come to pass that Donald Trump, with Henry Kissinger providing the intellectual heavyweight ballast, are the only people in America, or here for that matter, talking sense about the need to stop this war before it goes nuclear?
I think one of the things that has happened recently is Joe Biden was speaking at a fundraiser in New York, and he invoked the specter of nuclear war, and in particular he used the word nuclear Armageddon. I think that the neocons had planned on arguing that we were in danger of a nuclear war so that they could get people more frightened and more easy to control. But I think it had the opposite effect, particularly amongst the wealthy and powerful who they want to stick around a while and enjoy their wealth and power. Consequentially, we've seen a number of very powerful people come out and say, whoa, let's put the brakes on, and perhaps we need to talk this thing down. And Donald Trump, specifically now, is calling for immediate diplomacy to end the Ukraine conflict. I think that's going to have a dramatic effect, particularly because he has so much power and such a strong following in the Republican Party. It's going to make it more difficult for the neocon Republicans to move forward, allied with the Biden neocons.
Yes, one would have thought so, but it has come to something where it's labelled far right to be trying to stop a nuclear war. Once upon a time, that was the loony left's job.
Yeah, well, absolutely. But I think what has happened is this is going, and particularly, as I said, it's very important that Joe Biden did this and that the neocons lately have been pushing this nuclear war trope. Clearly, you can see that it was a plan because it's everywhere in the news and it's being discussed everywhere. And I think it was really part of their plan. They saw the support dissolving, and they felt this was going to help. And instead, they scared the bejesus out of Americans, and now people are going in the opposite direction. And I also think it's going to have a really bad effect on them, because as people call, particularly people of note, Donald Trump, Jeffrey Sachs, Elon Musk, start calling for a negotiated end, it will reveal the truth about the neocons, that they aren't honest players here, that they don't want an end, and that this is not about what they're saying about they really want to weaken Russia, that they're really playing a game here, and they're not being honest with the American people. So they don't want a negotiated end, and that's going to make it more difficult for the neocons to hide their malicious intentions, shall we say.
That's a very shrewd observation, as always, from you. Trump, therefore, you're saying, is not actually leading this. He's responding to what is a rising tide. I mentioned Mearsheimer earlier, but Sachs is a much more contemporary and centrist figure in American academia, and his calls this week were so powerful and so damaging to the Biden administration. And then Elon Musk, who has been flying the Starlink satellites that the Ukrainian gunners were using for targeting, he turns in a dramatic 180 So in a way, this is not isolated. This is not Donald Trump just out there. This is something that is happening across the board, center-right maybe, but across that center-right board.
Well, let's never underestimate Donald Trump's political inclinations, his political abilities. I think Donald Trump was probably somewhat, opposed to this from the beginning. He's continually saying, if I was in charge, this wouldn't have happened. And I think Donald Trump might have waited a while. He had, kind of made some references that he wasn't happy that this wouldn't have happened under him. But I think he was waiting for the political cover. And I think someone like a Sachs, who's considered on the left, someone like an Elon Musk, who's considered somewhat of an independent, maybe a bit of a libertarian, they gave Donald Trump the cover that he needed. They're significant characters of note to come out strong. And I think that's going to be, it's going to make it difficult for the Republican Party, because how do the neocon Republicans respond? Do the neocon Republicans push back against their base and side with Joe Biden? So this is a huge move by Donald Trump in the pressure that it's going to create within the Republican Party.